My name is Jessica Hurwitz, and I manage our network of wonderful providers. Today, I'm so lucky to have Jasmine Young on the podcast with us. She is the founder of ONE80 Health and Wellness. ONE80 Health and Wellness is a nonprofit, and it is dedicated to supporting people who've experienced trauma with an emphasis on healing as a crucial form of self-care and personal empowerment. I really liked on your website, Jasmine, seeing healing isn't a luxury, it's an assignment. I loved that, and I kind of
Thank
wrote it
you.
down for myself in all caps, so that's going to be stuck with you. Jasmine, tell me a little bit about you. I know you've got lots of experience in trauma, and that's a lot
Mhm.
of where your work centers. How did the organization get started?
So initially, out of need for myself, anytime I tell the story, it's the same story. I was going through a space of healing myself and didn't really know transition in life. It was after a divorce, and I was in a place where everything was regulated, safe, but unfamiliar. And because of that, I had like a week-long panic attack. And coming off of that, trying to figure out what that was about, I did some reading, researching it, and realized that my body was having a reaction to not being able to fix anything because there was nothing to fix. And so when I realized that I had been living that way for so long, I figured I can't be the only person who's dealing with this. And so I started my journey in understanding what trauma was, what it did to the body, what it did to the mind, and how we started to kind of behave in survival mode and it became our identity. And when I realized how heavy that was, I figured I needed this for myself, and I'm pretty sure other people need it as well. So I became the person in that space.
Is this when so at this point, were you in the mental health space yet as a profession, or did you then start your schooling in the field?
Not at all. I was in marketing.
Really? These are the best. This is how the best tale goes. These are the best
Yes, I
stories.
was in marketing. I had been in sales and marketing for like 15 plus years. And I was at that point because this was right around COVID.
Mm.
And I had a marketing company and I started doing marketing for other small businesses. And again, it was because I was getting my life back on track. And so transitioned from still in marketing and trying to figure out what to do. And then I started working at a school. I had met with a principal at a school, and it was a trauma behavioral transitional school.
Wow.
And it was just crazy, not crazy, but
I know
everything
whenever
happens.
I know, whenever I catch myself, I'm like, you know what I mean?
Right. It's one of those things is you don't expect it to happen, but it's happening. And so everything was kind of aligning the way that it was supposed to align. And so working at the school, I was really, really close with the principal. And she was telling me, this is something that you need to do more of. And so that's when I decided it's probably time to go back to school to learn a little bit more about this, get the licenses that I need. Because working in a school environment, that's what I thought I was going to continue to do. You have to have certain licenses. And so I went back to school to get my degree, get the licenses, and then realize after I think I was at the school for 3 years. And I think maybe at the year and a half mark was when I decided to form the nonprofit because I wanted to do something to give back because it's a thing where a lot of people don't even know they need access to this. But when they figure it out, where are they going to get the access? And so I formed the nonprofit while working at the school.
Wow. What are some services that you offer?
So I do individual coaching.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
Great.
One of the biggest things that I get a lot of requests for is the training that I actually do. And so I go to different organizations. I started off in the schools because I was already there, and I do a lot of trauma informed training
Okay.
to where just having the understanding because again it was a behavioral transition school. So they're already dealing with a lot of trauma. A lot of the educators aren't familiar with the language. And so the kids kind of get stuck in this cycle. And so I do a lot of trauma informed training in schools. I do trauma informed training in different corporations. And
Okay.
then I also do workshops.
Great. Okay. What are some examples even of when you're doing these workshops? What are some groups or populations that you find yourself doing those most with?
mothers and daughters. And it came very organically because when I first started, I didn't have a set of like, these are the groups that I'm going to work with. It was just, this is what I'm going to help teach.
Great.
And then organically, it started becoming like people would come to me and ask me, I have this certain issue or I have this problem. How can we address it? And the more people would come, I'm thinking, okay, well, that would be a good workshop. And so it was a lot of mothers and daughters not knowing how to communicate with one another, or mothers passing their trauma down to their daughters and realizing that when their daughters get a certain age, they start to behave in the same way, and nobody really knowing what that's coming from. And so that's been a really big one, is just being able to coach and communicate and kind of navigate conversations between mothers and daughters.
When you're in the schools, what's the age range of people that you've worked with the most?
And I'm glad you asked that because a lot of people are surprised. The age range is from 3 to 20.
Mm.
The youngest that I have worked with has been a 3-year-old.
Is that typically in more of a play therapy model with someone that young, or not necessarily?
That is usually the approach
Okay.
that a lot of people will take. For me, I like to do real world. So before even going in and addressing the situation with the student one-on-one, I will observe them for about a week. Because for one, they're 3.
Yeah.
They so a lot of they don't even know why we're there. And so it's very important for me to get them in their authentic setting, because that's when your behavior is real and true. If you let a child know this is why I'm here, they're going to immediately put on a mask and they're going to perform either one way or another. And so it's just an observation for me from the beginning to kind of pick up on, how they're reacting to certain people, certain environments, what their behaviors look like. And then you can kind of tell. Being a trauma-informed coach, one of the things that I specialize in is body language. And
Mm.
so even if at 3 years old, if they don't have the words to say or express themselves, I can kind of tell by, their body language. And so for me, it's not play therapy, because I feel like you would think that their defenses would be down, but they know more than what we expect them to know.
It turns
And so,
out that apparently
yeah.
that is true.
And so it's like, yeah, they might be a little bit, but no, it's really like they're putting on for us. And so for me, like, play therapy is not my approach, or the approach I would take. It's just what is your everyday like? Let me come into your world.
That's so refreshing to hear, because when I was in grad school and did my internship, I was placed with
Mhm.
young kids doing play
Mhm.
therapy. And I remember always noticing them noticing me.
Mhm.
And, we're saying that we're just here to play, like, you
Right.
play, I'm here. But you see them looking over their shoulder, like,
Mhm.
is she watching? Did she see me do
Mhm.
this? Or like, should I do this? I
Right.
really appreciate what you're sharing, that there are, and maybe it's just me that thought this, that like, okay, 3 years old, it's play therapy. Maybe that is my ignorance. But I love that there is a different approach, that
Mhm.
it's not necessarily they're under this age, it's just sand tray therapy.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So something I believe you have a lot of knowledge on is identity reconstruction and self-concept
Yeah.
as a core framework in trauma healing.
Mhm.
Tell us everything. Educate us, tell us, fill us in.
So this framework that I designed comes off of, when I started the organization and even before being in the school. And I'm grateful that that's where it kind of started for me, because I think that when you can interact with children, that's the most authentic understanding and comprehension that you will get about behaviors. And it took me years to kind of figure out, okay, how can I approach this and deliver it to where it's understood no matter who I'm talking to. And it was your identity. Because a lot of times, starting off as a child, you're kind of told what your identity should be.
Mm.
And then you go through the process, adolescence, and you're figuring it out. And that's the same way that trauma works, is that when something happens, you think that you're supposed to be a certain type of person, but then trauma creates this completely different identity for you, and you start to behave in that way. And so research and just kind of observations, that's what I landed on was, in order to build self-concept, which I think is the core of not necessarily healing from trauma, but understanding it, being more aware of the trauma, is being able to understand who you are. Not, who you're supposed to be, not what the trauma created, but actually who you are to your core. And the identity reconstruction is basically understanding who you are and being able to stabilize that in whatever circumstance. And so it's all about nervous system regulation, being able to, so it's not a thing. A lot of people will tell you, well, when you're dealing with trauma, you either mask it or we talk it to death, but it's what I think is important with self concept is acknowledging it and saying, yes, this has happened. The identity reconstruction part is saying that I'm still who I am, even though this happened, because I'm going to be triggered again. So, how do I move forward?
That's really interesting. And when I knew that was something that you really specialized with, especially that concept, I was thinking in my head, I was like, what does that mean? I need to know. I need to know more what that means. And from everything you've said so far, it really seems like what you focus on is your own. And I mean
Mhm.
that's a compliment. I mean that, like, it seems like you've gathered this information, you've done a lot of studying and research, and based on everything that you've gathered from observations, everything, it seems, are then applying that
Mhm.
kind of broadly.
Yes.
I feel like that's a theme I've maybe picked up on, and I love
Yes.
that.
Yes. So it can be anybody that I work with can take it and apply it. It can, because it's not, gender based, it's not age based, it's not cultural. It's based off of who you are as a person. It's very much centered on, the framework of self-concept.
Do you when you go into I think that you had mentioned you go into workplaces
hmm
or do some work with trauma and how it impacts the workplace. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
hmm Um a lot of times where, because my bachelor's is in industrial organizational
Oh,
psychology.
great.
And so that helped a lot, being able to go into the workplace. And a lot of times people don't think about, when you think about retention at work and how to retain employees, they never think about trauma. That's probably far from, an employer's thought process. But we have become a society where mindfulness is a thing, and we're trying to make sure people get their mental health in place, and we're giving them the days, but we don't really know why. And so when I go into a workplace, let's say for instance, like a call center is a big target hotspot with trauma, a lot of times because of the customers that they deal with, but then it's also the things that they're dealing with at home. A lot of employers will tell you, leave it at the door. Don't bring home to work. Don't take work home, but that is almost impossible for people to do. And so where they're missing the mark is they're not teaching the transition of how to cope while you're at work or while you're at home, being able to say it's okay to say I need a break, or being able to walk away from something, or thinking, well, I lost this employee not because they missed a lot of days, but why did they miss so many days? And so going into corporations and businesses and organizations, it's really talking about that, just the fundamentals of understanding the mindset of an employee, and more so the why as opposed to, what's happening. Getting back to, this person hasn't been to work in a week. Well, let's talk about the reason. It has to something to do with what they're dealing with personally, and not being afraid to merge. A lot of people don't want to merge personal with work, but how can we not? Because I'm the one working. And so it's just getting back to the root and just the understanding what that employee is actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis outside of the job.
And is the work that you're doing primarily with, would you say, the management to help them understand, or the employees themselves, or a mix of both?
It's so I have different levels, and it really depends on what the organization wants. We can do management. We can do employees. A lot of the times when it's a retention issue, they want to work with the employees. I will always do a consultation so that I can kind of, hint, hint, give my observations. Like if it's a retention thing, we may need to work with the management. I love to do both because I think that's really the most effective way. But I offer a wide variety. But normally, once I come in and do the employees and they bring me back to do the management and vice versa, because you can't be effective in one area and not be effective in the other.
I like that you do that, and I hope people are receptive. I know that's probably not always the case when you go to a workplace and say, "No, no, no, I'm taking a look at things first." But
Hmm.
it's so important because obviously when we are, like, prescribing what we
Right.
think we need and whose issue it is, chances are it's not always that, and it's not
Hmm.
so simple. So they're getting this professional who's really analyzing the situation and then figuring out a plan.
Absolutely.
Is most of your work, would you say now, how would you say it's broken up the most with the different services that you offer?
As far as like what am I doing most of?
Yeah.
The workshops.
The workshops.
Yes, mostly the workshops. I'm starting to see more of a shift into the individual
Mhm.
coaching. And I want to say it's because I've changed the framework a little bit and I'm working more on the
Yeah.
identity and the self concept, and people are seeing that. And it's one thing where that's the kind of thing where they're afraid to do it in front of other people because it's a little personal. So it's workshops are very heavy on my caseload, but I'm starting to see a shift in more individual coaching.
That's such a good point that you make that with how it's following a path that starts out and then people are that it goes kind of in probably the trajectory that
Mhm.
you guessed that it
Yeah.
would, how things would progress, but that's
Mhm.
the expert in you knowing that.
And I kinda set it up that way because, again, it's a very personal thing. The conversations that we have, the things that we talk about, and it's not and I let people know a lot of times the observations that I do, it's not just for the corporations and organizations. Like, I don't go into anything without observing first. And also when I do individual, it's not accepting everybody either. There is an assessment that they have to take, and if they don't fit the criteria, then I won't work with them because we're going to hit a wall. Either they're not ready to do the work or they're in a space where there's just not enough information for me to be able to assess. And so again, it's doing that for a while. I built it up to where even when I do workshops, a lot of people are filtering off and wanting to do the one-on-one coaching.
Mhm.
And that's just how the framework was set up.
Do you do work when you get connected with like a workplace or organization? Do you do work with like employee assistance programs at all? Or do you get referrals from by word of mouth?
So I am working on the employee assistance programs right now. I'm working on being able to actually get contracts because right now it is all word of mouth, which I'm grateful for. Starting off in the school, I was able to make a lot of connections, and so everything is word of mouth right now as far as the organizations and the corporations go. But I am working on being able to get contracts, and so kind of putting it out there more, being able to once I'm done with school, we'll go through insurance and all of that.
So I'm so curious how you see this going. I know
Mhm.
it can always be a surprise. Things will throw a curveball.
Mhm.
But do you see things for the organization progressing toward continuing to do tons of workshops? I know hopefully getting way more into the corporate and all of
Mhm.
that. But do you see in a year from now, do you have an idea of where you see the organization? Do you have people working with you?
Yes. So what I foresee in the future, the near future, is being able, because I'm creating this framework and trying to turn it into, get it trademarked so I can turn it into an actual framework that people can use, creating a certification process because I do have a goal as far as how many people I'm wanting to reach. And I know I can't do it all on my own. And so I'm wanting to get other organizations certified in this particular framework, and so just being able to outreach that way.
Any idea what we're gonna call it, or is that hush hush right now?
The framework, it is hush hush right now.
once you come up with something, which I have a feeling you already did, I'll be
Mhm.
so curious to know. So that'll be our part 2 once we can
Yes.
find out the name and get certified in it and all the good stuff and
Yes.
get
We've dropped some
connected.
hints. We've said some things that tie into the name.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Do you think the work with the kids will continue a lot? Where do you see that going for you?
Absolutely. It has to. And that is mind-blowing to me because like when people would ask me as far as like the question of the age group, like I never expected to work with children ever. But working in the school system, I realized a lot as far as the age group that kind of inspires me the most is middle school because I feel like that's where the identity starts to develop. And that's where a lot of my research has been on identity and the brain developing and all of that. And so it has to. I think in order for me to continue to progress, I have to be able to continue to work with children because I think that children are ever progressing and I won't be able to understand behaviors authentically because when you get to a certain age, you are who you are.
So, Jasmine, a lot of what you're doing is seeming to have a really universal theme to it with what you're working on and what you're coining, especially in terms of trauma and how that's worked on and observed, especially perhaps with the stigma that might be associated or that we know is associated. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is the perfect time. A lot of people are in a space where they're learning more about mental health and they want to know what that is. They're still afraid to kind of acknowledge their own trauma, but everybody has trauma, no matter how big, how small. And I want that to be the core essence of what I do is that everybody has trauma and the trauma that you've experienced has shaped your identity in some way, shape, or form. The only way to continue being the best person you can be is figuring out what changed about your behavior, what changed about your identity because of the trauma. And so that's what we discuss. That's what we talk about. That's what the framework is. And it can apply to any and everybody.
That universal part of the whole thing just keeps rearing its head
Hmm.
and that's really comforting to people. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but to think that there could be something out there that I could learn about and apply to different things,
Hmm.
that is so less exhausting
Right.
in theory
Hmm.
to like the lay person like me.
Right. Right. It takes the pressure off of, do I have to learn something new?
And then pivot it to
Right.
apply to everything
Exactly.
different.
Exactly. Because all it is you're relearning who you are.
This has been so interesting. I could not be rooting for you more.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you have your fan base already, but please add one more to it and then add everyone who's going to listen to this and want to know more about what you're doing because that's going to be I want to know so much more about what you're doing so I can only imagine how much interest you're going to spark out there.
I'm excited.
I'm going to make sure that I link your website at the
Okay.
end here, and then let me know anything else that where people can reach you, if that's okay with you,
Absolutely.
different resources that you might know of. Thank you so much for being here. We will
Thank
absolutely be
you.
in contact again. I always
Absolutely.
joke to some podcast guests, like, well, now you're stuck with me. Now you've spent this time with me. We're bonded,
Yeah.
not
I look
trauma
forward
bonded.
to it.
Had to throw that in there.
Right. But
Thank you so much, Jasmine. I will talk to you soon. I'm so excited about what's to come.
thank you. I appreciate you having me. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.